Hey there! Ready to go deep on some serious strategy? We're diving into The Art of War by Sun Tzu. You know, how to crush your enemies and become a master strategist. Even though it's ancient, this book is surprisingly relevant today. We're going to be unpacking how to achieve victory without even fighting, why deception is so important, and why being called a sneaky snake is actually a compliment in Sun Tzu's world. Seriously, this book has been around for centuries. People still turn to it for advice. It's kind of wild. What do you think it is about The Art of War that still makes it so relevant today?
What gets me is how Sun Tzu goes beyond just, like, the battlefield. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of literal military interpretations, but it's really about psychology, right? Planning, calculated action. You can apply those principles to so many things. Think about business negotiations, personal relationships, even just approaching a challenge in your own life.
Right, like he cracked the code of human nature hundreds of years ago. Pretty impressive. And he structures the book in these chapters, each one focused on a different aspect of warfare. But are there any common threads, like big ideas, that tie all of Sun Tzu's teachings together?
Absolutely. One major theme that runs throughout the book is how important it is to avoid direct confrontation whenever you can. Sun Tzu really emphasizes this idea of winning before war even begins. You pick your battles, you get to know your enemy inside and out, and then you look for those weaknesses, those pressure points you can exploit.
Okay, that makes sense, but how do we actually find those advantages? He mentions spies quite a bit.
It's really interesting how much he stresses the importance of information, of intelligence gathering. He even dedicates a whole chapter to the use of spies. 5 different types of spies, in fact.
5. Okay, we might have to come back to that because that's a whole other deep dive right there. So we've got deception, choosing our battles strategically, a whole network of spies. It's all very cloak and dagger. But he also talks about terrain, right? Like the actual physical battlefield. How does that factor into Sun Tzu's Art of War?
That's what I love about Sun Tzu. He never lets go of the practical elements. So yeah, he identifies 9 different types of terrain, and each one, he says, requires a different approach. He's all about adapting your tactics based on your environment, using it to your advantage, even turning what seems like a disadvantage into an opportunity.
So no just charging into battle then. We gotta analyze the situation, think strategically, maybe even set a trap or two. It's more like a chess match, not just a brawl.
Exactly. It's about achieving your goals, whatever those goals are, with as little loss as possible. And that's true whether you're talking about a literal battlefield or, a metaphorical one, like, say, a boardroom.
So essentially, The Art of War is really a guide to strategic thinking, period. You can apply it to almost any situation.
Exactly. It teaches us to be adaptable, resourceful, to always be thinking a few steps ahead, and to be ready to adjust when we need to.
Speaking of being a few steps ahead, Sun Tzu really seems to love a good element of surprise fire attacks, flanking maneuvers. Is that just for dramatic effect, or is there a deeper strategy there?
It all comes back to deception and exploiting weakness. A surprise attack, when it's timed perfectly, can completely demoralize your opponent. And when your opponent is demoralized, they're so much easier to overcome, even if they've got you outnumbered.
It all sounds a little ruthless. Maybe not ruthless exactly, but very much like a win-at-all-costs kind of vibe. Is there any room for compassion in Sun Tzu's Art of War?
You might be surprised to hear this, but Sun Tzu actually believed that minimizing casualties, and that includes casualties on both sides, even the enemy's side, was super important. Prolonged warfare, he argued, only leads to more suffering. A swift, decisive victory is actually the most humane option in the long run.
That's surprisingly humane for someone who wrote basically the book on military strategy. Okay, we've got to talk about the Shuai-Zhuan analogy because that one always stuck with me. Can you remind us what that one's all about?
Of course. The Shuai-Zhuan is this snake. It's found in the Cheng Mountains, and the thing about this snake is, it doesn't matter where you strike it. Head, tail, middle, it's instantly ready to counterattack.
So basically, be more like the unpredictable, always ready to strike snake.
Got it. But how do we actually apply that, in a business deal or even just dealing with a difficult coworker?
And that's the beauty of this analogy. It's about creating this unified, adaptable strategy. You need to be ready to respond to any threat, no matter where it comes from.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about being tough, it's about being flexible, ready to change your tactics on a dime. Sun Tzu really knew how to make a point, didn't he? But before we go full snake strategy mode, let's talk about those 5 essentials for victory that Sun Tzu outlines. Absolutely. The 5 essentials are really like the foundation of Sun Tzu's whole strategy. They give us this framework for achieving victory, and not just on a battlefield, but in any situation where you need to think strategically.
Okay, so let's break them down. What's the first essential we should be thinking about?
The first one is knowing when to fight and when you're better off not fighting.
Ooh, I like that. Choosing your battles, right?
Exactly. It's about conserving your energy and your resources for the fights that truly matter, the ones that'll actually move you closer to your ultimate goal.
Don't let your ego, or that feeling that you have to prove yourself, drag you into some fight that doesn't even matter.
Exactly. Okay, so the second essential. This one's all about knowing how to handle both situations when you've got superior forces and when you're dealing with inferior forces.
So it's about knowing how to play the hand you're dealt no matter what cards you've got.
Yes. If you're up against someone stronger, it's about using your agility, your creativity, maybe even a little deception to kind of level the playing field.
It's David and Goliath. You've got to use your size and your speed to your advantage.
Yeah.
What about if you're facing a weaker opponent? You're not just gonna charge in.
Right. Even with a weaker opponent, a reckless attack can totally backfire on you. It's about being swift and decisive, capitalizing on your strengths, but always staying alert. You never know when there might be a pitfall or some kind of unexpected counter move.
So it doesn't matter if you're the underdog or the top dog. The key is to go into every situation with that strategic mindset, adapting your tactics to whatever's in front of you. Makes sense. What about the third essential? What's Sun Tzu have to say about that one?
The third one's all about unity. Sun Tzu says it's about ensuring that your army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks.
So it's not enough to just have a few brilliant minds at the top calling the shots. You need everyone, the whole team, to be on the same page, right?
Absolutely. Sun Tzu knew that a united front, where every single person feels valued and understood, like they're part of something bigger than themselves, that's way more powerful than a group of individuals, no matter how skilled those individuals are.
Okay, so how do you actually create that sense of unity, that shared purpose?
It starts with leadership. A strong leader knows how to inspire their team, they communicate clearly, and they build a culture of trust and mutual respect.
When people feel valued, when their contributions are recognized, they're going to be much more likely to go the extra mile, to really fight for the team's success.
Exactly. And it's amazing to me how Sun Tzu was thinking about this stuff centuries ago, and it's still so relevant, so important today.
It really is. Okay, on to essential number 4. What's the key takeaway there?
The fourth essential is all about preparation and timing. It's about being prepared yourself while waiting to take the enemy unprepared.
So always be one step ahead, always trying to anticipate your opponent's next move, and then bam, you hit them when they least expect it.
You got it. Sun Tzu was all about minimizing risk and maximizing your chances of success. And that means doing your homework, gathering intel, understanding the terrain, all that.
It's like they say, chance favors the prepared mind. You can't always predict what your opponent's going to do, but you can be ready for anything they throw at you.
And it also highlights the importance of patience. Sometimes the most strategic move is just to wait, to observe, and then strike at exactly the right moment.
Don't let yourself get baited into acting too soon or rushing into a situation where you don't really understand what the consequences might be.
Right. It's about having the discipline to control the pace of things, to dictate the terms of the engagement, rather than just reacting emotionally or impulsively.
I'm starting to get this. It's all making a lot more sense now. Okay, 4 down, 1 to go. What's that final piece of the puzzle, that fifth essential?
All right, so the fifth one, this may be the most intriguing one. It's about having military capacity while not being interfered with by the sovereign. This one's about the relationship between political power and military strategy.
Okay, I'm listening, but I'm not sure I totally follow.
Basically, Sun Tzu is saying that a military leader, they need the freedom to make those split-second strategic decisions without someone looking over their shoulder all the time.
You mean without having to deal with a ton of bureaucracy or worry about, political backlash?
Exactly. Sun Tzu realized that even though they mean well, political leaders, they don't always have that on-the-ground understanding, the awareness of what's actually happening in the moment to make effective tactical decisions.
So it's kind of like Trust the experts, right? Trust the people who are closest to the action to make the best call based on their experience and knowledge.
Right. Of course, it doesn't mean you just ignore political considerations altogether.
Yeah.
But it's about finding that balance, making sure that military strategy is driven by what makes sense strategically,
Right.
not just what's going to play well politically.
So have a clear understanding of the bigger picture, the overall goals, but then trust the experts to figure out the tactical stuff.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So we've got these 5 essentials. Knowing when to fight and when not to fight, understanding how to deal with both stronger and weaker opponents, building a unified and committed team, being prepared and ready to seize opportunities when they arise, and then making sure that the decision makers have the autonomy to, well, actually make decisions. It's like the cheat sheet to strategic success.
And what I love about these essentials is that they apply to so much more than just warfare. You can use these in any situation where you need strategic thinking, leadership, and a deep understanding of human nature.
So whether you're leading an army or running a business, negotiating a deal, or even just trying to navigate a tough relationship, these principles can really come in handy.
Absolutely. And that's why the art of war is still relevant today. It's not just about winning battles. It's about understanding human nature, mastering the art of strategy, and using those things to achieve your goals, no matter what those goals are. I like that. I feel like I've got a whole new understanding of this book now.
Me too. It's so interesting to revisit these principles and see how they play out in our modern lives. But before we wrap up our deep dive into the art of war, we've got to talk about one of the most memorable parts of the whole book. I'm talking about the shuai-jan, that snake that's always ready to strike back.
Oh, yeah. I love that analogy. It's like, be adaptable, be unpredictable, and be ready to respond to anything, no matter where it comes from.
It's true. You can always find something new in there.
Right. I always walk away with some fresh insight. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought, something to chew on this week as they put Sun Tzu's wisdom to the test out there in the real world.
I like that. What's the big takeaway for today?
We've talked a lot about strategy and deception, even that shuai-jan snake, always ready to go on the offensive. But one of the most important things I get from the art of war, it's actually about being self-aware. Sun Tzu, he keeps coming back to this idea that you need to know yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, even your tendencies, just as well as you know your opponent.
It's so important.
Yeah.
And it's easy to forget. We get caught up in what everyone else is doing, analyzing the competition or whatever. But if you really want to master strategy, it starts with mastering yourself.
Totally. It's like that old saying, know thyself. If you don't get your own motivations, your own blind spots, how you react under pressure, you can't really strategize effectively. You're just reacting instead of making conscious choices.
And that takes work. Something you have to keep thinking about, It's not enough to just read The Art of War once and think, okay, I'm good now. You got to let those ideas really sink in, look at the choices you're making in your own life, and ask yourself, am I approaching this strategically? Am I letting my emotions get in the way? Am I being intentional?
Those are good questions. I think that really gets to the heart of what Sun Tzu was trying to teach us. It's bigger than just winning battles. It's about winning at life. And life is messy, right? Unpredictable. And it all starts with understanding the most complex terrain we'll ever encounter, ourselves.
Well said. So, to everyone listening, as you go out there this week, I want you to channel your inner Sun Tzu. Be strategic, be adaptable, be a shuai-jan when you need to be, but most importantly, know yourself. That's how you set yourself up for success.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's a wrap on this deep dive into the art of war. We'll catch you next time as we explore some more fascinating topics, ideas that can help you navigate your world with more knowledge, more insight, and more strategic brilliance.